Dr. Daszak, how much was the grant that you were reinstated given for?
I think it was $2.2 million.
Okay.
Some of the money was never reinstated.
Okay. Your understanding the risk of back coronavirus emergency grant was eventually reinstated by the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, despite the fact that Wuhan Institute of Virology was barred from receiving federal funds. I think that was just discussed ad nauseum, so I won't kind of go into too much detail on that. But your grant was reinstated based on probably advice that you got from some people, and I just want to kind of go into that a little bit. Did you have any conversations with your grant about your grant reinstatement with Dr. David Morens, the senior advisor to Dr. Fauci?
I don't know.
You don't know if you had a discussion?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know. I'd have to check my records.
Did Dr. Morens ever give you any advice on how to reinstate your federal funding?
Yeah. I mean, I asked everybody who had any knowledge about the way NIH works on any possible strategy.
So you did have discussions?
With many, many scientists, both
Okay.
those at NIH and elsewhere, yeah.
So were you aware that Dr. David Morens was communicating with you on his personal Gmail account to avoid FOIA and public accountability?
I was aware that he was communicating with me on his personal Gmail account, sometimes, yes, for personal matters.
So, personal matter about reinstating a public grant?
Well, it's not his job to reinstate it. This was me asking his advice as a friend and colleague.
About reinstating a federal grant. Got it.
Yeah, I mean,
do you find it problematic that a senior advisor of Dr. Fauci, the head of NIAID, was communicating with you on Gmail rather than an official capacity about an official grant?
Well, when I'm talking to him by email about personal and security issues and political attacks.
Security issues. So you talked with him security on his Gmail account?
Yeah, I talked to him about the attacks in my house.
Okay. Officially, when your grant was officially terminated in April of 2020, do you think that Dr. Morens undermined NIAID's decision by advising you on how to get it reinstated?
Well, if that were true, then everybody else at NIH who advised me on how to get it reinstated, including the official reinstatement procedure, would also have undermined.
Fair enough.
Stop it getting reinstated.
Did you make any insertions that you would be able to obtain information from the Wuhan lab in regards to your research when you were trying to get your reinstatement of the grant?
The assertion was that the U.S. taxpayer who'd funded the work we did in Wuhan would get a fair shot at then getting that information and making it public to protect the U.S. taxpayer from future coronavirus threats. That's a very valid and noble...
So you assumed that you would have access to that information, is that correct?
We already had access to...
Do you have access to it now?
After a certain day, we had access to genomic sequences from Wuhan, yes. Yes, we do. Okay.
Where are those samples today?
I'm talking about sequences, not samples. This is exactly as I was saying earlier. People commonly make that mistake. The samples are in the freezers in Wuhan. The sequences, the genetic information...
So you have access to the sequences, not the
Yes,
samples?
I do.
Okay,
yes.
very good.
And I stated that clearly to NIAID all the way through the negotiations. I also stated clearly we did not have access to the samples.
Okay.
They were in the freezer. They will probably remain there.
And Wuhan is no longer receiving any tax dollars, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When it comes to your research, and I know that we're talking some semantics, but I understand the sequencing. By the way, have you ever found any consequential sequence of this virus in the bats that you've studied?
Yeah, we found a lot of consequential sequences, yeah.
So in other words, are you finding the coronavirus that's infected human beings in the bat population in general that's continued to survive?
Oh, no, that's a different question. No,
yeah.
no.
So I would make the case that maybe from the very beginning, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, I think, we haven't found it in any animal samples, despite massive research to begin with, and yet we continue to pour millions of dollars into something that should exist. As a physician that just talked to you before, we spent millions and millions of dollars and hundreds of samples for different species all over China and have no evidence that it's in an animal origin, but yet we continue to send millions of dollars to try to find evidence that now we can't get to, essentially, and that's really what you're here for, is that's why we're upset, that we feel like that this grant was not misrepresented. It was seeking information from the wrong source to begin with, and that the grant principle of the way we get our grants was misrepresented too, and that's what we're all kind of angry about right now.
Well, the grant was scored in the top 3% of grants in that review period.
And
it was considered high impact.
And that's exactly the problem, sir. That's exactly the problem.
It was scored that well because it is high impact.
I know why it was scored that well, but I would disagree with you vehemently, and that's why I think we're here to make a statement.
But I think I pointed out in my opening statements that we had, from the work we've done in China, we now have lab assays that can be tested against vaccines, drugs, and therapeutics to fight COVID to save people's lives. That's how science works.
I yield. Dr. Morens, it's become apparent, now I'm no lawyer, I'm a doctor, but just looking through what evidence we have and what we subpoenaed and what we've gotten, it's become apparent that you and many employees at NIH and NIAID have been stonewalling and outright avoiding our subcommittee's investigation. Not only is this a violation of law as far as I'm understanding, but it also fosters a continual distrust of government and its officials and what we've been funding. Last July, this select subcommittee discovered the initial evidence of your misconduct and reported it to the National Archives and Records Administration. And at the National Archives' direction, NIH started an investigation into your use of personal email to conduct official business and the unlawful deletion of federal records. Now, interesting, you talked about to avoid embarrassment. I think that's done just the opposite. When the investigation began, you were placed on paid administrative leave. In simpler terms, you have been continuing to receive your salary and your benefits, but do not perform any official duties. As far as we have been notified, you have not been subject to any discipline or accountability to this point. Is that correct?
Well, I would say that being placed on administrative leave is a discipline, because I love my job and I would like to be back there doing work, and it's painful for me not to be able to work with my colleagues. And may I also say that that investigation of me that you referred to for destroying documents exonerated me and said there's no evidence I destroyed any documents.
Okay.
And you probably have that information yourself. I have it.
I'm not going to ask about the status of the investigation because I think that's inappropriate this time, and I don't think it would be appropriate for you to comment on ongoing investigation. But I hope the subcommittee receives the answers from the NIH as to the status of the investigation soon, which we still have not received, because we don't think that it's appropriate to pay people who aren't able to do a job at the time. So I think we're both wasting our time. In your emails recovered through FOIA, you boasted to Drs. Daszak that you had a secret back channel, quote unquote, to communicate with Dr. Fauci. That's what we've seen so far. We also have statements concerning the NIH, NIAID, and FOIA's officer instruction on how to avoid document production through intentional misspellings of keywords to avoid triggering hits in automated search queries in response to FOIA requests and congressional oversight inquiries. Dr. Morens, do you deny these statements?
You know, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed everything you said. I'm also getting a little echo from your side, but let me move away from them. Let me turn off the microphone.
May I reclaim that time that I'm going to repeat, please? Thank you. We have statements concerning the NIH, NIAID, FOIA officer instruction on how to avoid documents production through intentional misspellings of keywords to avoid triggering hits on automatic search queries in response to FOIA requests and congressional oversight inquiries. That you had these secret back channel ways to get a hold of Fauci, that you were trying to avoid queries through FOIA by misspellings and other things. That's what we have come to the conclusion on. Do you deny that? Microphone.
Microphone.
I think there's some misunderstanding here. The secret back channel joking terminology, to my knowledge, was never about FOIAs.
So you're going to joke about back channels to Fauci and about misspellings on queries. That's a joke. Not very funny to me.
I would have to see this communication. It's confusing to me because I had no back channel. I could walk into Tony's office and talk to him anytime I wanted. There's no need to have a back channel. And I had face-to-face meetings with him all the time. So, the back channel thing.
So you deny these statements is what you're saying?
I think there's a mix-up somewhere.
So you deny it? Yes.
I guess I do.
Okay. Dr. Morens, we have your previous statement on FOIA documents here. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to submit these documents for the record.
Without objection.
Okay. Based on your answer, you either lied to Congress or your transcribed interview or are lying here today. This causes me to believe that your behavior as senior scientific advisor to the director of reflects much broader NIH and NIAID-wide practice, which really concerns me. This select subcommittee must bring HHS and the agencies beneath it to heel in every way possible over the final 7 months of this subcommittee. I want to take a moment to thank the chairman and my colleagues for their leadership thus far. We must earn back American people's trust and confidence. We must have full transparency, and with that, I yield. It's been insinuated that politicians, only bloggers, only conspiracy theorists are disagreeing with you. I want to point out that I'm probably the only member of Congress that actually treated patients during the pandemic from the very beginning to the very end of the pandemic, during night shifts in the ER. Thousands of patients during that time. And in 2020, I was censored. My medical license was threatened because I disagreed with bureaucrats. Literally taken off the internet as a person who is treating patients with leading-edge technologies, developing theories, but doing my very best, but being censored by the United States government for the first time, stepping in and taking the place of medical professionals as the experts in healthcare. Any dissent surrounding COVID-19 treatments, mask mandates, and any public policy surrounding the pandemic was immediately labeled as anti-science. I watched as public health officials and politicians told my patients what treatment options were best for them, regardless of their comorbidities or their medical history. Despite my education and my training and my experience, my opinions were relegated to conspiracy and misinformation by so-called healthcare experts who had never treated a patient throughout the entire pandemic. This has been a black eye on the medicine and has highlighted why government should never insert itself in between patients and their healthcare providers. The American people deserve to make medical decisions through conversations with their physicians rather than politically motivated mandates. Dr. Fauci, did you ever treat a patient for COVID during the pandemic?
I was part of a team that was at the NIH that took care. We didn't take care of many of them.
Okay, so not hands-on. Got it. Thank you. Why would I be criticized by a bureaucrat for doing my very best as a healthcare? This is a rhetorical question. But why? Why would the government, who's never treated a patient for COVID, you can read all the things you want, but you're not there. You're not seeing patients. You're not watching people die, intubating patients right there with that disease in your face, watching it happen, watching the development of this disease and actually learning from it. But I'm being told by bureaucrats what's right and wrong. And what's funny is everything I was censored on, I was proven to be right. Pretty crazy, isn't it? You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it. I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and
Thank
that's
you.
not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context. And I take great offense to this. Miss Allison Williams testified before this committee about losing her job because she sought an exemption for ESPN's vaccine mandate, which came from recommendation from bureaucrats like yourself. She and her husband were actively working with a fertility expert, a physician, on how to get pregnant and agreed with the premise that she was young, healthy, wanted to get pregnant, and shouldn't get the vaccination for medical purposes. But she was fired because you made it hard, just like you said in your statement, because you didn't want to make sure that the ideological bullshit got in the way of her working, of living her life, of making a medical decision with her healthcare professional. I think America should take great offense to this. That's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights. Shame on you. Dr. Fauci, you've become Dr. Fear. Americans do not hate science. I don't hate science. The American people hate having their freedoms taken from them. You inspired and created fear through mass mandates, school closures, vaccine mandates that have destroyed the American people's trust in our public health institutions. This fear you created will continue to have ripple effects over generations to come. You have already seen its effects in education, in the economy, and everything else. Quite frankly, you said, if you disagree with me, you disagree with science. Dr. Fauci, I disagree with you because I disagree with fear. And with that, I yield.